Shemai, welcome back to the latest episode of the Be Better podcast. Thank you to all our listeners. I actually met one of my listeners in real life the other day. Shout out to Jonathan Eales, CEO of Enable. He listens to this podcast on the treadmill. So go fast, Jonathan, turn it up. Come on, 12K an hour, whatever it is, push, go the extra K. So thank you to all our listeners. With me today, we have the awesome, the amazing Adrien Taylor from Not Another. How's it going, mate?
Yeah, really well. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
It's a pleasure, man. I was just trying to remember, when did we first meet? Was it possibly when you were at uni, or was it after that? I can't remember.
Yeah, possibly when I was still at
possibly
uni.
sometime when you were around there. I was bumping around UC for a little while there seemed to be a bunch of you. It's like, I don't know, it feels like University of Canterbury has pumped out a bunch of impact-driven cool entrepreneurs around about that same period. There's like yourselves, Brianne from Etique, Sam from Little Yellow Bird, Bridget Williams from Bead and Proceed. Obviously something in the water in Canterbury at university around this. Or what beer were you all drinking? There's something in the beer or the water around that time, clearly.
100%. Yeah, there must be. Yeah, no, I was about to say the same thing. Something in the water for sure. Did I make just positive vibes, positive Canterbury vibes.
That's what it's all about. So for people who don't know who Adrien Taylor is, who are you and what do you do?
Big open question. I am the co-founder at the moment of a creative agency based in Christchurch, with an office here in Christchurch and in Sydney, and a team of about 15 of us around the world. I co-founded the agency with my business partner, Mark, about 5 years ago, and sort of fell into the world of creative agencies through a bit of a long-winded way, or a sort of atypical kind of journey. My background was actually in journalism, did that for a few years, then sort of left the world of journalism, did some sort of documentaries and on climate change, did a couple of other businesses, started a cap business and a bunch of stuff. And then, sort of somehow fell into a creative agency here in Christchurch, where I met Mark, my business partner, and through a sort of process of working out what we did want to do and didn't want to do, kind of eventually landed on creating our own creative agency, which is called Not Another. I
Nice.
run that now, and that keeps me busy. It's been 5 years going, and still going strong. So that's kind of me.
Very cool.
Short.
I like it. And I like the name, and your website's quite cool. Well, I haven't looked at it for a while, but it's like Not Another website, Not Another da-da-da. It's like, it's a cool name for a agency.
Plenty of ammunition with the Not Another name. We've made tote bags that are Not Another tote bag. Not another email signature. We've sort of thrashed the name to bits, and really it came from, finding a business name, as you know, is really, really hard. And it just really came from our ambition to not be like any of the other agencies, and do things a little bit differently.
Nice. And so how did you and Mark know each other? Was that a long-standing sort of friendship relationship, or you just sort of bump each other in a bar one night like, hey, I want to start an agency?
Yeah. So what happened was I'd been a journalist, then I sort of left the world of journalism and had concentrated on my startup Offcut, which was a hat business. I can talk about in more detail afterwards. And then I was doing a bunch of things. So after the world of TV3 in Auckland, I was for a couple of years, I made a couple of documentaries, co-directed a couple of documentaries on climate change, one in Bangladesh and one in Mongolia. And when I was in Mongolia, I think it was the second one. When I was in Mongolia, I got an email from Kyla Colbin, who I'm sure everyone is familiar with, in Christchurch, an absolute force to be reckoned with, wonderful woman, and she said, hey, a friend or a business acquaintance of mine is looking for someone to come in to their creative agency in Christchurch called Strategy, and I thought you'd be great for it. Would you be interested? And I had come from journalism and sort of, I guess, entrepreneurship or whatever was my only sort of experience. Had never worked in or with a creative agency in my life. So sort of said, classic, but thanks, but no thanks initially. And she said, oh, well, I think you should meet with Jeff all the same. Just come in and see him. So when I got back from Mongolia, this is all while I was in Mongolia filming this climate documentary. When I got back from Mongolia, I went in and met Jeff who then became my boss at Strategy Creative, and that's where I met Mark. So I was the strategic director there, writing all the brand strategy for our clients, and Mark was the creative director, sort of leading the charge on all things creative. So we worked together at Strategy Creative for about a year, and that's how we sort of met, hit it off, and then we peeled off again for about a year. I think after that, did our own things. I moved to Vietnam for a bit, and we're still working on Offcut, my hat business at the time, but we stayed in touch. We were sort of aligned on this idea of creating another agency that was not another agency. And so after about a year, got back together and set up here in Sumner by the beach.
Nice. Yeah, it's a real terrible place that you've got your office. I've been there a few times.
We had it.
I mean, how you actually get any work done, I don't know. I just be on the beach all day.
We're a creative agency. We just wave our hands and
exactly,
just skate around Sumner, eat ice creams,
stroking your luscious beard.
Exactly, that's exactly
with your metaphorical pipe. I'm thinking turquoise.
Exactly.
Cool. I guess that's quite a well-worn path of startup creative agencies. People working for a bigger one, more established one. Hey, let's go out, do our own thing. It'd be interesting to track the total number of agencies that have been spawned from larger ones. I'm guessing it's quite a few. I mean, my dad was like that. He was working for like McCann Erickson, WPP, like big global ad agencies in the 70s, well, late 60s, 70s, and then ended up spinning out into smaller and smaller companies and stuff like that. So sort of a well-worn path.
No, 100%. There are a lot of agencies, and like you say, I think it's absolutely a well-worn path. It's the way it's done.
And so what were you doing at uni? What course did you do at uni that has led you to? I mean, I think we'll start at university, see how did the career go, and then maybe look back before that. But so what did you do at UC?
Yeah, so I did my undergrad. I started at UC, then I went and did I did a BA, basically to answer your question. Finished it at Vic, so I did 2 years at Vic,
right,
and then came back and actually did postgrad back at UC journalism.
Yep.
So sort of after high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I went traveling for a year, and it was through that year of travel, I was kind of writing, back in the day of email, I think it was pre-Facebook and all that. I was writing these big, long emails back to family and friends and all that kind of stuff, telling them about my travels. And one day, my mum, who was very concerned that I was going to become a traveling bum for the rest of my life and never be a productive cog in the great machine that is society, sort of, over the phone call, she kept saying, what do you want to do when you get back from your travels and all that? And I said, I don't really know. And then one day she goes, well, what about journalism? You obviously like writing. What about journalism? And it really, really sort of struck a chord. I was like, that's a great call. So long story short, I got back from my travels and knew that that's what I wanted to do. And I knew that the course I wanted to do was at UC. It was a postgraduate journalism course with Jim Tully. And so did my BA, across a little bit in Christchurch, but mainly in Wellington at Vic. Came back and did journalism at UC postgrad.
Nice. And so the BA, was there anything particular in
that
the
was
BA you would do?
It was media studies and religious studies. So to do this postgraduate course, you just had to have any degree. And I sort of started with anthropology, and then the religious studies department at Vic was so good that I just found it fascinating and ended up majoring in that. But it didn't really matter. And I quite like that about journalism. With this postgraduate course, is they actually liked people to have as diverse a background as possible. And I think that's a really key kind of necessity for journalists, is just to have a degree in whatever you want. You can train to be a journalist.
Wow. So media studies and religious studies. Look on the Venn diagram. Where's the overlap? or
Writing
not.
essays,
I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, I suppose you could argue that the Bible is one of the original forms of sort of journalism, media, storytelling. I guess.
Yeah, exactly. No, I never thought of it that way. Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of irreligious or almost atheist, and had sort of no intention or no intention to get into religious studies. But like I say, I sort of ended up, what it's like in first year, you kind of just do a whole bunch of stuff and did a paper and just loved it and thought the department was awesome. And it's it's basically a social science. It's obviously not not teaching anyone religion or how to be something like that, but fascinating topic.
Nice. That's super cool. Anthropology, because I can just about remember my first year. I think I did psychology, philosophy, and then history was my chosen degree. So you had to do history.
No, yeah. Nice.
I just wasn't mentally ready for philosophy. Turned up to the first tutorial, and the professor goes, "Is this a question?" And I'm just like, I possibly, I don't know. I'm just not. My brain's not ready for this. I can just about drink beer and tie my shoelaces and play rugby, and that's where I'm stopping, I think, sir. So I dropped that and did language and communication instead, which was a little bit easier on the brain. Yeah, that anthropology, philosophy. I've kind of been exploring some ideas of topics that I'd really like to, be looking at. And that anthropology, philosophy, history of religion, theology, like all of that. Like just why do we do what we do as humans? Like just
100%. Social science is fascinating. Yeah. And possibly if I could go back and wind back the clock, I'd go and do history. I've fallen in love with history in more recent years. I love it. All the reading I read quite a lot, but it's all historical fiction. It's my favorite genre. Nice. So learning about history in a way that's kind of compelling with all the love stories and all that kind of stuff that's fictionalized and woven through. But I absolutely love it. I love history. It's such an important thing to understand.
Yeah. Have you got into Dan Carlin's podcast? His history. You should check. So he's got a paid option and a free option. Okay. There's a bunch of his content for free on the usual podcast platforms, but his episodes go for like 5 hours. And the one that I really enjoyed was the whole Battle of Thermopylae, Spartans, Persians. So I'm pretty sure if I remember it correctly, the first one is the Battle of Thermopylae, but then he goes back for like maybe 3 to 5 episodes, and he takes you back almost like 1,000 years to the beginning of the Persian Empire, and then brings you back to the battle.
Awesome.
It's for people. I don't understand people. Oh, history's boring. It's like,
how is that boring?
How can why you are here today and how you are here today be boring? And also, it almost annoys me when you see. I did medieval history, so the whole Viking stuff. Really love it. And you go, why have you had to make up some of these characters? Because the real characters were possibly even more impressive than the sort of fictional one. You've had to
100%.
Just doesn't understand it. But anyway.
100%. No, history is fascinating. History is absolutely fascinating. I think another common thing that New Zealanders say is go, but we've got no interesting history in New Zealand. It's all in Europe and all that. That's not true. A few years ago, we were doing a project for a family near Kaikoura who've got this farm, and this farm, Waikene, has got 800-year-old paintings on it from Waitaha people who I think even predated Maori or sort of slightly predated and then merged into becoming a Maori iwi. And it's just fascinating, like there's paintings or drawings that are like 800 years old here in Aotearoa. So there is plenty of obviously interesting history and Maori history.
There's a proper rabbit hole you can go down that one. There's a guy, Freddie Silver. He has done a bunch of research on the Waitaha.
Cool.
Controversially, possibly Celtic people here in New Zealand with the Waitaha, because they talk about this giant race of green-eyed, red-headed, blonde-headed people who they were trading with, and they were living in pretty good harmony with them. And there's a few documentaries on YouTube where this one lady, she is Waitaha, she's a Waitaha elder, and she has got red hair, green eyes, but Maori complexion. And she's like, I am a descendant of these giants, the giants as they were referred to. I mean, I'm 6'4", like 6'4", blue eyes, blonde hair. Like I possibly, I've obviously come from the UK, but it's really, really interesting. And Freddie's got some interesting theories on some areas, but his research on the historic, he actually is moving to New Zealand to further his research on that. Cool. He thinks possibly, so in the Waitaha tradition, Castle Hill, which is this amazing rock sort of feature just outside is it northwest of Christchurch, I guess, on the way to the Alps, somewhere around there. The Waitaha believed that was the center of the universe for them. And so there's this, it's like you say, the more you go down the history rabbit hole, the more you get to these theories. And I actually think sometimes the whole creation myth stories, like, sure, they might be fables, but also there's some stuff that you go, well, that's really interesting because that's in this this people have that tradition, but the same story is also in Sumeria and it's also in South America.
100%.
And how do they all have that same tradition from 4,000 years ago when they never met each other?
100%.
Yeah, how you can't be curious and interested by that shit. I'm sorry, I just don't understand you.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you big time. Yeah, absolutely fascinating. Yeah.
So when you were at school from a young age, was writing? Were you in the playground like before two kids about to have a fight? Sorry, tell me, how do you feel about the fight in the playground? Like, were you that kid? Where did this sort of skill? Yeah, what was your age?
I don't know. It's pretty funny because I don't think I was particularly strong at English or writing at school. I think I was okay. I was probably stronger or more interested in the sciences, to be fair. So I loved my physics, loved maths as well. So yeah, I honestly don't know. I just maybe I've just got too much to say. Or to be fair, I prefer to be doing the questions like what you're doing right now. I'm not really used to being on the receiving end of the question.
How do you like it now, Mr. Journalist?
Yeah, exactly. I think curiosity is, I often say this, I think it's obviously an absolute crucial skill for a journalist. You just got to be curious, right? But I also think it's just one of the most important skills for anyone. I don't have any children, but if I had children, I think curiosity and creativity would be the two. And then obviously empathy and kindness and all the other stuff. Obviously, don't be an arsehole as well. But in terms of like skills to better yourself in a kind of career and personal development sort of way, I reckon curiosity and creativity are pretty crucial. Creativity in the way of just thinking outside the square to solve problems. I find like a lot of people just really struggle to kind of think a little bit laterally to solve issues, solve problems that they haven't sort of overcome before. And then curiosity, I just think it's actually it's just such an important attribute to have to learn, but also to be a kind of a likable person. If you're a curious person, you tend to ask a lot of questions, and people like to be asked stuff in general.
In general, apart from journalists being interviewed,
but
journalists being interviewed on podcasts.
Exactly. Like two curious people.
Yeah, this can go for hours.
I can flip these questions to you. I would right now.
I think it's curiosity. I reflect on that. It's an interest, again, from a social science perspective. You could argue that curiosity is actually a very dangerous evolutionary concept because what happens if I smash these two rocks against my head? Oh, I don't know. Let's find out. Or I wonder what's over the edge of that cliff. Or possibly the first human who was like, oh, I see those birds fly. Wonder if I can do that. Oh, it turns out I can't. So like at its extreme, curiosity is potentially quite a dangerous. But I think it's almost like, I don't know whether you've read any of that or listened to any of Matthew Walker's content. He's like the sleep guru. And he talks about how, again, sleep is actually quite a dangerous evolutionary tool because for any mammal to be out of, sparko for 8 hours is actually really risky, particularly when every other animal that could eat us is pretty much nocturnal. His theory is sleep must be so vital evolutionary that the lack of safety or the danger that you're in while you're sleeping trumps the not sleeping. And I kind of wonder if curiosity is kind of almost in that boat. It's like if you push it too far, it's the classic, what's that moving in the bushes on the savannah? Oh, it's a lion. Too late. Versus the bushes is moving. That's enough. I'm curious enough to know now that actually, and I guess 100%. Over time, I just find it interesting.
No, it's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, and you look at children; they're so curious. Babies and stuff like that. They're grabbing stones and doing
eating
all
them.
sorts of stuff. And it just gets bitten out of us. I guess as we get older, maybe as we get wiser, so that we're not chasing lights in the savannah. But it is still an important attribute, being curious.
Yeah, no, totally. And so, were you entrepreneurial at school and uni? Did you have like side hustles and stuff?
Yeah, no, I guess always was. And I remember with my best mate in high school buying MacBooks. Pulling all of our money together that we'd spent, that we'd saved over years and years, doing our sort of weekend jobs and putting all of our money into buying a MacBook because we thought we could make a couple of $100 off selling it back here. That was kind of the extent of my entrepreneurship. And that obviously always ended terribly because we hadn't factored for customs bills and all sorts of stuff. And so Yeah, and shipping times and all the other stressful stuff when you put all your money together. So no, there was a bit of that. Then in uni, we had a sort of I did a uni hall, and a few friends and we were always what we called scheming,
Nice.
and scheming to kind of come up with business plans and stuff like that. But yeah, nothing really of any success. But I always had that sort of mindset, and I think I always knew I wanted to go and do something of my own. And sometimes I do think back and go, oh, you hear all these obviously success stories of people who dropped out of uni, who didn't go to uni and started these amazing multi-million-dollar businesses and all that. And a part of me goes, oh, did I waste my time doing sort of 4 years at uni or 3 or 4 years at uni, and then 4 years as a journalist and all that kind of stuff? But I think fundamentally not. Like, it was all very enriching experiences and all that kind of stuff.
Totally. So, and it's the classic sort of sliding doors, like you'll never know. And I think Stephen Moe, of Seeds podcast fame and local lawyer extraordinaire or partner in a law firm, he asked me once on his podcast, like, any regrets? And it's like, well, no, because everything that you've done has led you to be who you are today, and you wouldn't be who you are today if you had a different path. And you would never know what that, in a parallel quantum universe, there's another Tim, another Adrien on a different podcast where you're interviewing me because I did something different and you did something different. And
totally.
I think you can spend your whole life thinking about that. There was because you've got a bit of a French connection. There was a French movie I watched years ago, and I cannot remember the name of the movie, but in one of the scenes, one character asked the other, "Oh, do you regret that?" And I'm pretty sure it's the woman says, "There's no such thing as regrets. There's only things you did or didn't do." And I just think that just really sums it up. It's like, you either did or you didn't do it, and you are where you are. And you overthink, coulda, shoulda, woulda.
100%. 100%. I love that. There's a great, and I'll bastardize it, there's a great rap song by A$AP Rock that talks about, it's called Lucy, and it talks about this woman who someone asks her at the end and goes, oh, do you have any dreams? And she goes, no, a dream is something that you want to do but never pursue, but I've always done what I wanted to pursue since day one, basically. And I obviously can't remember the exact lyrics, but I love that sentiment as well. She's like, no, I've got no dreams because I've just everything I want to do I've done. And a dream is something that you think about but you don't actually do. And I was like, oh, that's quite a good philosophy. I really like that song.
Nice. I'll check it out.
So I should really learn that. I should learn it so that
get it
bring it up. Someone goes, oh, wrap it for me. I can wrap
it. So uni then traveling.
No, travel. Yeah, school travel, uni.
School travel, uni.
Yeah, and then
and so getting into TV3, was that easy process? You had the degree. Presumably, like, do they have connections to help you feed in?
I was. I have never been afraid to ask for what I want, and so there was at TV3. In journalism school, the head of news, a guy called Mark Jennings at the time, came and spoke to our class. And after class, I went and chased him outside the class and said, hey, I want to come and work for you. And he said, sweet, send me an email. And to his credit, actually followed through with it. So I flicked him an email. He goes, yep, come up. And so I did two like internships or 2 placements at TV3 over the sort of uni holidays, mid-year and then towards the end of the year. It was an awesome experience like that, just thrown straight into the deep end. I think on my very first one, he goes, go into the Christchurch office. And this was the year of the earthquakes, by the way, as well. This was 2011. And he goes, go into the Christchurch office for 5 days or whatever. Went in, I think day 3. So Pike River, it obviously all happened, months earlier at the same time as the earthquake. This was probably mid-year by this point. So I go into the Christchurch office, get sort of, brought in straight into and that's the great thing about journalism and news. Like, there's just this real culture of sharing what you know with the juniors and all that kind of stuff. There's no kind of pretension or anything like that. I don't think that everyone's super giving of their time and all that. And so, I was in the Christchurch office, and then a guy, Jeff Hampton, who's an absolute stalwart of the journalism scene at the time, had to go over to the West Coast to cover Pike River. And they're like, do you want to come, Adrien? So this was like day 2 of my sort of placement there. I said, oh, yeah, cool. So go over, and I can't even remember, to be honest, what was the story at that time, but something had sort of, obviously Pike River coverage was ongoing at that time. And then I spent the night in Greymouth, and John Campbell was down for Campbell Live, and we're having dinner with him. I'm sitting right next to him, and he's asking me what I'm doing. I'm like, oh, I'm just a journalism school student. And all these experiences are pretty enriching when you're when you're a young journalism student, and and then I was holding the light in the freezing cold for John Campbell as he was doing his live cross on Campbell Live and all that, and pretty epic experiences. So did that first, then I did a same again for the next holidays in Auckland, and then at the end of that, Mark goes, you've got a job. You start. I think my journalism school finished on November 4th, and he said, you're up. That's Friday, Monday, first thing, nice. November 7th or whatever it was, you got a job in Auckland.
Boom. I think that's I come from a background in sales, and we do some sales training and coaching for B Corps. And I often say to people, it's so easy to be great, because you just actually need to reach out and ask and then follow up. And because 99% of people won't even reach out and ask. And the 1% that do reach out and ask once won't follow up 10 times.
100%.
And 100%. It's so easy just to do that. But it takes obviously a layer of confidence and I guess mindset to do. That's what stops most people. But it reminds me, I lived in Australia for a year, left the UK, went to Aussie for a year, went back to the UK, did a year, then came to New Zealand, and I ended up living with this Aussie family, and the dad of the family I was living with was an ex-army guy, and he had a mate of his who was an ex-army guy, Gary Butterfield, and he just said, he came up to me and shook hands, said, "G'day," and he said, "I said, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just sort of traveling around," and he said, "Look, just keep smiling, shaking hands, and saying g'day, and good things will come your way." And I'm just like such a great believer in that. Just, hey, can you help me with it? Like, if I had a young lad yesterday. I say young lad, I think he's just a recent graduate, through a mate of a mate. Hey, he's looking to get into medical device sales. That's what I used to do. He's like, he just wants some advice. I was like, sure, I'll have a chat with him. And I said to him, look, the fact that you've reached out to a couple of people, I said, just get on LinkedIn, connect with all the CEOs and regional managers of all the medical device companies that you're interested in, send them a connection request, find their email, send them an email, say, hey, could I please talk to somebody in your organization about how I get into this industry? You'll get a job.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think you're dead right. I think especially New Zealanders, we are a little bit shy, we're sort of a little bit reserved, or don't want to inconvenience anyone or come across as pushy or annoying. But there is obviously, and there are people who are annoying. I'm sure we both get targeted by people who are spammy or whatever through LinkedIn and all that. But if you're not spammy, if you're not annoying, if you're respectful of people's time, people always respond to it well, or most people do, and some people don't. And you have to be prepared to get people to just ignore you or take.
And that's fine.
That's fine. Who cares?
Yeah.
But I couldn't agree with you more. And you're talking about the younger lad as well. You've got a real advantage when you're young as well, because you can be a bit more annoying than maybe I can be.
You get a bit more latitude. Yeah. You should know better than this, Adrien. Yeah,
exactly. It's the 10th time you've called me today, and now you're getting annoying. When you're young, you can kind of get away with that stuff a bit more. But no, 100%. Just be persistent. Be just and absolutely ask for what you want to get, and it generally comes good. If you go about it the right way.
Nice. Yeah. So TV3, then documentary maker.
That's right.
So you quit TV3 to go traveling, or how did that all happen?
Yeah, kind of. So I was at TV3 for 4 years as a journalist, and really enjoyed it, loved it. But also knew I sort of wanted to do more stuff, kind of maybe get into business or just build something that was my own, So I interviewed. I was the climate change and environment reporter at TV3, and as part of that, I found out about this guy called Dan Price, another great Welshman.
Nice.
Who was cycling. So he's Welsh, but lived in New Zealand for years. Was cycling from Christchurch to Paris to raise awareness about the 2015, was it now? Paris
Paris Accord.
Climate Summit. Paris Accord. And so I was like, oh, that's cool. That's a great story. So reached out to him, did an interview with him. He was already in Indonesia by the time I'd sort of cottoned on to the story. So we did a video interview like this and ran on the news. And I sort of flicked him an email afterwards and said, oh, mate, I'm really impressed by what you're doing. If you need a hand with anything, super keen to get involved with this kind of stuff. And then he sort of flicked me an email a couple of weeks later and said, hey, I've actually just got some funding to do a documentary on climate change from the UNDP. Got some funding from the UNDP, to do a documentary in Bangladesh. And he's like, I'm a climate scientist. I've got no idea how to make documentaries. Do you want to get involved? And I sort of said, yeah, I don't really know how to make documentaries. I know how to make TV stories for 1:30, but I don't really know how to do 25, 30-minute documentaries. But of course I'm keen. So I went over to Bangladesh. Had never met this Dan in person, but I met him over there. He's become an absolute great mate, best mate since. And we filmed this documentary in Bangladesh together with another couple of very, very talented videographers, a couple of young guys, Michael and Sam, who have since also become great mates, who came over from Christchurch, and they were like 16 at the time or something like that. It's absurd. Or 17, I think they just finished high school. And I get to the airport, and I'd only met them once before as well, and their parents are kind of talking to me. I was 22 or 23, and their parents are kind of talking to me like
you're in charge.
Taking these two 17-year-olds to Bangladesh to meet a climate scientist
that you've never actually met. This has got sketchy. This has got child trafficking written all over it.
Exactly. And no, it was awesome. It was awesome. We were there for 2 or 3 weeks, I think, and produced a documentary on sea level rise called 30 million. 30 million because with 1 meter sea level rise, 30 million people are going to be displaced in Bangladesh. Obviously, shockingly big numbers, and going to the sort of the front lines, I guess, of climate change, and it's the country that's probably going to be most affected in terms of numbers of people affected. And it was an awesome, full on but awesome experience. And the UN sort of looked after us while we're there, and made sure we got interviews with all the people that we wanted, and took us to the coast and all that to meet people on the front lines of climate change. So it was nice. Good experience. And then did the same again the year afterwards in Mongolia, this time also for the UNDP.
With the same
crew.
Right.
Just the four. And that was on the melting glaciers in Mongolia, which are a source of like a major water source for the summer months when the glaciers melt. That's where a lot of Mongolians get their water from. But obviously because they're melting too much now, there's going to be not going to be that kind of summer stockpile of water.
Well, highlights of I had a mate of mine, she from uni, Catherine. I don't think she's a listener. Maybe I should tag her in this episode. She used to lovingly call it Mongolia. We just thought it sounded cooler. Where are you off to? I'm off to Mongolia. Where's that? It's kind of close to Mongolia.
Mongolia. Love it.
But highlights of the trips. Mongolia is a place. It's possibly on a list of mine that I'd like. There's another rabbit. There's lots of internet rabbit holes with you on this one. Did you experience any of the Mongolian throat singers while you were in Mongolia?
Yeah, sadly we didn't experience any firsthand, but we used
of it
in the soundtrack of the film, and it's epic. I would have loved to see. It's incredible.
Like I say, you talk about that sort of depth of culture, and just that history. It's like, there's just. I know when people say like New Zealand's got a history, I think it's just we're not connected to that history. But there is a depth in some of these places where you just kind of go, okay, this is just super cool. It's
unreal. Right. I mean, I was talking about loving history and reading historical fictions. The one I'm reading at the moment is the 5th book, and I think it's the last one. I think it's the last one I'm going to read. As much as I love it, it's like books like this, but it's the author I think is Con Eggleston or something like that. I think he's Welsh as well, maybe Irish. Anyways, it's on Genghis Khan and his conquest of basically, well, not the world, but
most of it.
He got as far as, I think, in the 3rd book, without ruining it for anyone who might read them, I think they get as far as Budapest. Right. Basically like knocking on, the next stop was Vienna. It's unbelievable. Took over all of China and all that. So it's a fascinating history. So Mongolia, crazy rich culture, super fascinating, brutally cold. We were there, I think, not even in the middle of winter, and it was negative 30 degrees it got down to. It was one of the guys that were with us out because of the cold, and it was absolutely brutal. I've never felt cold anywhere close to that. Like just
like to your bones.
Absolutely to your bones. Wearing 2 puffer jackets, 2 thermals, jersey, like I don't know, probably 7 or 8 layers, wearing 2 pairs of gloves, the thickest gloves you can find, and it's still like someone's jamming needles in your hand. Unbelievable. But beautiful country, like absolutely stunning country. I think it's got the most extreme weather variation out of any country, because I think in summer it gets to like plus 40 degrees. And then in winter it gets to negative 40. It's got the highest, the most
sort of range.
Range out of any country.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. So documentaries, and then back to New Zealand.
Then back to New Zealand. Did another little short stint at TV3. I think that was just before Mongolia. Actually, it's all a bit of a blur, floating around doing a bunch of different stuff. Then I think I started. Then I sort of joined a business incubator here in Christchurch, Lightning Lab, for another business idea that I had that failed. There was a bunch of different ideas that morphed and then sort of flopped. And then during that time, I started Offcut. So that was an idea I had when I went to my dad used to run a curtain wholesaler, curtain fabric business. And went to his warehouse one day and saw a room full of offcuts that basically were discarded and no good to him, and sort of most of them ended up in the tip. So I said, can I take these and do something with them? And he said, yeah, for sure. So took them and started getting them made into caps. This one's a bit wasted. It's one of my favorites that I wear all the time. Nice. But and then was doing that for about 4 years, I think, before I sold Offcut during lockdown 3 years ago. So that was my sort of first foray into entrepreneurship, or first sort of remotely successful kind of foray into entrepreneurship.
Nice. And I mean, it's a cool business idea. Were you sort of driven? Well, I guess before we ask that question, so have you always been socially and environmentally conscious? Have you been like a purpose-driven human from day one? Because obviously did you choose to sort of go down the climate change reporting route, or were they like, oh, Adrien, you kind of like this stuff, we'd like you to do it? You've clearly got an interest in doing good and highlighting doing good. Is that, again, if you look at like your school reports, was it like, Adrien is always in the playground cleaning up after the kids? Have you always been like that, or
it's a good question. I mean, I think so. I think, both my parents, but I'd say especially my mum has always been very, very, very big on, we never were we allowed to throw food out in the home, which I really appreciate now as an adult, as I'm big on that as well, food waste. And reluctantly, obviously, like everyone, because I just live with my girlfriend, and cooking for two is not always easy. And sometimes I throw out the odd piece of food and I feel really guilty, because I know mum would be absolutely disapproving of that. So little things like that, and much bigger things, like just in general, mum is huge on how we consume and not consuming too much, and recycling and composting and plastics and all that kind of stuff. So I think she definitely got me on that sort of buzz. I think she took me to go see Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth when I was probably 16 when it came out, 15, 16. And that really had a big impact on me. I just remember sort of, obviously being old enough at that age to kind of appreciate the magnitude of the problem. I don't think I'd ever heard of climate change before then, but just remember sort of walking out of there and being like, how are we not talking about this all the time, every day? Like, this is insane. If this is true, this documentary. That had a huge impact on me. So I think probably like definitely grew up in a family that has been always aware of these things. And I think definitely my mum had a massive impact on my sort of care for the environment.
Nice.
Nice.
Yes, it's just always interesting to sort of find out, because I think, as I say to most guests, some people kind of have always had the lens of doing good throughout their life, whereas others, more like myself, were at school we'd go and do some volunteering, whatever, but it wasn't really endemic across the organization. And for me, the path that I was set on, doing the medical repping it was all about maximizing personal, financial return. That was the lens of my upbringing. Not that my dad was like a huge, he worked for himself. But the whole idea was like, you just got to try and be better. That whole neoliberal, just like fight your own game, earn tons of money, be successful, so that the school can say, yeah, look at all our alumni who go off and do amazing things. So the idea of kind of doing good came to me pretty late in life, when I sort of realized the effect that business is having, mainly negatively, in terms of some of its externalities and outputs. So it was just interesting to know, I guess, to know how we can be better parents, and to maybe guide. And I think kids these days definitely have a better sense, I think, of people.
Totally.
Every time I sort of say to my daughter, that thing you're looking at buying online, that's probably been made by a girl the same age as you. She's like, yeah, but it's cheap. I'm like, yeah, but really, come on. I'd rather we give you some money to buy the better made version from a reputable place that's going to last you longer, and then you can actually sell it secondhand and get some money back, rather than buying it for $5 on some shit online store.
100%. 100%. And kids have got an amazing ability to understand sort of what's fair and what's not as well. You don't have to like sugarcoat it for them or whatever. In a way, they're generally, I don't know. Sometimes they're a lot less selfish than adults are. So you explain those concepts to them, and they totally get it. I think it's something that has been kind of part of who I've wanted to be for a long time. I used to volunteer at Trade Aid during high school as well. So the kind of, I guess, the idea of using business as a force for good has been something that I've always liked the idea of, and not just doing handouts and stuff like that, but going, just like you say, if you choose to buy better, products, and if you choose to ensure that when you're buying a coffee, or whatever it is, that the people who are producing it are getting paid a fair price, then that's a very sustainable way for everyone to just make sure that everyone's getting a sort of semi-decent fair crack at everything.
Nice. No, perfect. Offcut. And then, so Trump Forest, when did that pop up?
Yeah, so
that was quite cool. I just remember that just exploding, certainly, locally, regionally on Facebook. It's like, this is such a tongue in cheek, but kind of cool.
It was it was very therapeutic for us. We were so Dan, this Welshman who's since become best mate, who I met in Bangladesh for this documentary. We obviously were always sort of passionate about climate change and constantly scheming about ways that we can do more public campaigns around climate change and that kind of thing. And then Trump got elected. So we're like, shit, this is a guy who is the president of, he's the most powerful man on the planet, and is saying that climate change is a Chinese hoax, and that it's not true and all that kind of stuff. Pretty hard pill to swallow for people who are like us, who are trying to devote at that time our lives to raising awareness about climate change. So we're like, what do we do? Like, we're in bottom arse end of the world in Christchurch. What can we do? And so with Dan and another great mate of ours, Jeff, who's actually American, Jeff Willis. So had a even more sort of, I guess, vested interest in it all, but based here in Christchurch at the time as well. The three of us got together and we're like, what can we do? And the best idea we could come up with in a space of just a few days, because we wanted to kind of move quickly, was Trump Forest. And the idea was to offset Trump's ignorance when it comes to climate change. And so, we just launched a website on Squarespace, built in a couple of days. Very, very rinky-dink. We never registered as a charity or anything like that, because we couldn't. Like, we all had full-time jobs and all that kind of stuff. So we partnered with a great charity called Trees That Count, and we said, cool, we'll just integrate your payment gateway. That way we're not handling any money. We're not, we don't want to touch money at all, because that obviously gets complicated, and register as a charity and all that kind of stuff. Just sort of piece together this pretty crappy Squarespace website, and basically managed to get a whole heap of media coverage. So we had zero budget, like we had literally no money at all, and managed to get worldwide coverage because I think we were sort of, like say, a little bit tongue in cheek. I think kind of nailed the messaging, and obviously resonated with a lot of people, which is awesome. And I think we got to 1.5 million trees by the end of it. Ran for about a year and a half, and I was manually every night getting these CSV spreadsheets, downloading them, reformatting them, and then re-uploading them to Google Maps to show these trees have been planted around the world. And I think it was like people had donated in 120 different countries or something insane like that, or maybe 80 countries. We got articles in Al Jazeera, The Guardian, all those sort of viral kind of Upworthy and God, what are they called? It's basically everyone covered.
You name it.
It went proper viral, which was awesome because it led to I think it all up, it was 1.5 million trees and something like $250,000 donated to plant trees to sort of, I guess, kind of take a stand against Trump's climate ignorance, which was cool. Really cool.
It's super cool. So I interviewed Elena Keith from an agency in Auckland called Seven, who
cool.
recently cool. And we were talking about the how styles of communication, advertising, advertising as a force for good, and how typically I think really good Kiwi campaigns, but I think globally the best campaigns typically have an element of humor, tongue in cheek. I think there's something innately human, as opposed to buy this thing. I look at like the perfume and aftershave adverts, like so formulaic. They're almost it's almost a parody because you're so when my daughter had she had a bit of something in her eye, like a bit of gunk in her eye, and she was walking around going, "Look at my eyes." I was like, "You sound like one of those adverts, like you can imagine like Gunkalicious by Daisy Jones," and it's like but it's I guess this was the beginning of you possibly thinking about the agency type stuff, because I just think about, because what you did was essentially you were almost running a campaign for a charity. Do you know what sort of percentage increase in donations they got per month through your campaign? Because clearly Trees That Count established, they've got some adverts going out there. It's just really interesting to sort of see how you put a spin on it. You put a campaign around it. It went viral, massive attention. Whereas if they just said, "Hey, we think Trump's not very nice, we'd like you to plant a tree," possibly would have got no cut through.
Nah, 100%. I think I think definitely sort of mine and Dan and Jeff, Dan and Jeff had done this Pole to Paris campaign where he'd cycled from Christchurch to Paris, and that had gotten heaps of media coverage as well. He was doing interviews all over the world. So Dan had an amazing appreciation of like the power of getting media coverage. And then Jeff was the one who was actually doing all the liaising for him. He was kind of the wrangler, and he was an absolute whiz on social media as well back in those days when you could still kind of make stuff go viral on social media or get good traction on social media. I think it was a combination of that, really. It was like sort of our appreciation of we sort of knew that the only way we were going to get it to work was if we could hack into like a media narrative that worked well. And I think like this whole narrative of like three dudes in Christchurch, calling out the American president. And we're very pointed in our language, I think, if we were bigger or in the US, we possibly could have got sued for defamation, but no, probably not. But we're very, 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 very pointed in our language. And I think it just sort of resonated well because like I say, it was kind of humorous. And people kind of like this sort of David versus Goliath sort of
100%
that we hacked into. And and then when things start going well, just people kind of enjoy being part of the movement, and then start getting coverage and all that, and it's a bit of a snowball effect.
Nice. Super cool. I think it's one of those good times when that famous website, Maps Without New Zealand on it, it's probably a good one that POTUS can't find. Who are these guys? Like, where are they? I don't know.
Exactly.
We can't even find them on the map. So
exactly.
Okay, leave them to it. It'll be all right.
Just another, what do you call them? Just another shithole country or whatever.
Well, the classic one. the Welsh rugby team had I think this was in like the late, it might have been the '99 World Cup or maybe the one after that,
Condolences, by the way.
2003.
Condolences.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, and to you, I suppose, for part of your
Yeah,
heritage.
France was
I
pretty
suppose
gutted.
you had $1 each way though in terms of potential outcomes of the World Cup.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was an Aussie coach as part of the Welsh setup when Graham Henry was the coach, and the question, I think Wales were facing New Zealand, and he said the reporter asked him, so what do you think your chances are? And he said, well, yeah, as good as any. New Zealand's just a poxy island in the middle of the South Pacific. And there was uproar from the New Zealand media, and he was asked to make an apology and a retraction. And he came up to the next media event. And he said, "Okay, yeah, sorry, I was actually wrong. Yeah, it's 3 poxy islands in the South Pacific, not one."
That's so good.
so Australian.
I love it.
But tongue in cheek, yeah. I love a bit of humor. I think you have to use humor in work.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
you can't take yourself too seriously in life.
It's pretty boring.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So yes, you seem to have had this theme of doing good, and as you sort of already articulated, the idea of having your own entity that you could use as a force for good. So yeah, when you and Mark started Not Another, did you have an intention of like, okay, we're only going to work for good brands? Or I mean, I know what it's like with a lot of consulting businesses to begin with. No client's a bad client because we just need to get. And I think it's reasonable that you got to pay the bills and you got to kiss some frogs before you find a prince or princess. So what was that sort of like?
100%. No, totally. But then I think, with Mark, we're super aligned. So from day one, actually, B Corp came up very early on in our sort of business journey as a conversation, and we said we'd love to do it. And then sort of like probably thousands of businesses do, you kind of start the BIA process and you go, holy moly, okay, this is really in depth. And then you kind of, you park it because you're just trying to get a business off the ground. And you kind of realize as well in your first sort of year or two, it's all pretty meaningless because you've got no baselines to measure against. You can't really, it's sort of a tough thing to do to kind of go, we're reducing X or Y, or we've got a policy on Z, because you just kind of don't have anything. So so it was always something that we wanted to do, and we looked at very early on. Then sort of gone, too hard basket for now. But I think in terms of values and the work that we do, we did have conversations pretty early on, and we'd work together before at strategy, and we sort of knew that we were aligned all on that stuff without sort of having to say it, which was cool as well. And then I think, pretty early on, we're like, sort of fossil fuel companies is a hard no for us, unless it's specifically to work on a project that they might have around renewable energy, potentially would consider it. So that was cool. So we sort of wrote that down, and we've turned down work over the years. When we started as well, I don't feel like we ever compromised our ethics. There were a couple of clients, not really. We've just we've sort of like you say, you have to pay the bills, but I don't think you should ever compromise your ethics. You should always be sort of proud of the work that you do. And it is a bit grey. Like over the years, we've turned down maybe 3 or 4 sort of reasonably sized projects, like actually quite large projects. And when sort of things are a little bit tougher, like this year, things have been a bit flatter just generally in the market and all that kind of stuff. And we've turned down, I think, 2 projects come to mind this year that we just sort of didn't agree with. One was in like sort of intensive farming, and the other, I think, was in mining. It was another fossil fuel company. We just reply. We said thank you, but no. That's it's just not what we do. So it's important to do it. Well, to us, it's important. To a lot of people, they don't care, but to us, it's important. And I'd rather be proud of the work that I do rather than kind of take the easy money. And both those projects were probably easy money and like as good as done, And like I say, when you've got staff to feed, or staff to pay and all that kind of stuff, it gets progressively harder to say no. But I guess also the more you say no and the more you kind of show the kind of work that you want to do through the work that you're doing, the more you attract that kind of work as well. So if you keep saying yes to not the right kind of work, well, you might find yourself then 5-10 years you're still doing that kind of work because people go, oh cool, they've got lots of experience with fossil fuel companies or with intensive farming companies, and that's not what we want to project. So it kind of, I guess, long term does maybe make sense financially as a business decision as well.
Yep. No, that's cool. Yeah, and I think in your sector, sort of agency, marketing companies, increasingly, there's a handful that we have worked with or are working with where they're all, the obvious decision is client selection. Whereas I think for us, we're slightly more, well, we want to work with any company that wants to be better. But obviously there are some hard no's in terms of there are just some organizations that can't be a B Corp. So but yeah, I think it's becoming increasingly common that agencies, digital marketing, branding, it's like, actually, no, we don't want to work with you.
Especially when 100%, especially when you're in our industry as a creative agency or as an advertising agency, like you're actively helping to present this brand better and this business better, and you're actually helping them to sell more effectively. So if you're sort of ethically against what they do, then it's a pretty it's a pretty kind of shit position to be in. I'd say, to be pushing something that you don't agree with ethically. So
and you're not gonna deliver your best work if you're not fully psychologically engaged with the end product and the results. So and no one's getting a win out of it apart from your bank balance. But like I say,
that's it.
It's not worth it.
That's it. Yeah. So not always easy, but I think kind of important to stay true, and business partnerships and stuff like that, like super important to be values aligned. I'd say, like anyone who's looking to start a business or bring a partner on board, like make sure that you're values aligned, because I think that could have led to a lot of problems if I was a hard no on potential work and Mark was a hard yes. Then it's like, when you're 50-50, who decides, and if I'm saying no to a chunky project, then am I responsible then for the business being in the red, or whatever, like sort of being at a deficit of what that project value is worth, or it is hard. So being aligned on that kind of stuff from the get-go is pretty crucial.
100%. And so, tell us a bit more about the B Corp journey. What was that like?
Yeah, cool. So like I say, I sort of thought about it right from the start, then probably parked it for a couple of years, and then really took it up again maybe 2 years ago. And I think we sort of battled with it for probably about 6 months by ourselves, didn't make a heap of progress, then reached out to you, and obviously we've known each other for years, and don't know why we didn't do it sooner. I think we'd let you know, and you're like, yep, absolutely, and then we're like, oh well, let's just dip our toes and see what the process is, and started doing it, and then just kind of realized that it is obviously a ton of work, which is good, it should be, and then you came on board, and I think over probably the space of about 6 months, about that, we'd meet with you weekly, maybe it was a bit less than 6 months, whatever it was, and made really good progress, and then obviously submitted, I think probably about this time last year, or maybe a little bit later, about December last year. And I think we were certified in February or March this year.
That rings a bell.
Yeah, something like that. So no, it's awesome. It kind of just cements what we've always known are our values as a business, anyways. And like, we've got a fully remote team, so having B Corp certification is something that's really like united everyone in our team, and it gets them excited. I think everyone's proud of that. And when you don't have a kind of shared culture by being in the same work space every day, you kind of have to instill a culture in other ways, and that I think is through your values as a business, and the kind of work that you want to do, and that kind of stuff. And I think that's what gets excited. It gets our remote team excited.
Nice
stuff.
And highlights of the journey. Was there anything that you were like, oh, that didn't even know that was a thing, or any sort of surprises, or no real surprises. I think it's just a lot more thorough than when I first looked into it, than what I would have realized right at the start. And like I said, I think that's a good thing. It needs to be super thorough, because otherwise it just loses credibility. And I know that well, I think we were talking about it before, it's even going to become even more thorough, by the sounds of it, which is great. It shouldn't be easy, because I think if it is, then it becomes meaningless. No real surprises. I think just a lot of pleasant, or maybe a lot of little pleasant surprises, because it actually makes you think about a whole heap of stuff, like you say, that you kind of probably implicitly know as a business
founder, but don't ever take the time to explicitly say. And then through the B Corp process, we're like, okay, cool. Well, we have to have a policy on breastfeeding women at work. It's always the example that I use, is like, oh, I'd never thought of that, but of course we're fine with breastfeeding women to be breastfeeding at work. Like that's totally fine. But not once has that ever come up as a 3-year-old business at the time. And so you're like, okay, cool. Well, let's write a policy on that and that kind of stuff. And then documenting all of that. And now we've got, really great employer handbooks, and the B Corp sort of journey helped us. We produced this book, which is like sort of the history of Not Another. And there you go, the big
nice
shiny bee on the back. And it's really helped us kind of do the writing for this book. Not Another is a certified B Corp. There you go. We say it pretty loud and proud. And just, it's really helped us sort of position the agency in a way that we want it to go to. So this was kind of through the B Corp process as well. We exist to drive positive change for people and planet through creativity is our purpose. There's a lot of the stuff that doing the B Corp process kind of helped us get down on paper and in books. And this has been really, really well received. This is
nice.
A thing that we give to prospective clients and current clients and all that, and they will go, oh, that's really impressive and really cool. So no, it was a good process for that.
Nice. Yeah, the team at Genora who we helped, they similar to yourself, like Monique founded the business, Colleen is on board now as like a director, chief operating officer. In their heads, they knew that people had like unlimited leave, or like if you need to, I know that it was flexi hours. That was it. Like in their head, they knew that. But fast growing startup, they never actually written it down and communicated to the whole team.
Yeah.
And so just little things like that. And then the rest of the team like, oh, wow, that's so cool. I had no idea. Oh, you guys are even better employees employers than I thought you were. It's just, it's fascinating how, and I'm going through the same as I'm sort of have been expanding the team over the last couple of years. It's like, well, I know how it all goes in my head because it's been me mainly by myself since I started the business. And it's, oh yeah, actually I need to tell other people because luckily most people aren't in my head. That's not a place I really want to go. Yeah, it's like, woo. I always remember there was a Simpsons episode where Marge is talking to Homer and it cuts through to like a slice through of his head and there's a monkey just smashing some cymbals.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
and he's like, you have my undivided attention, Marge. It's like, yeah, that's mainly how I see the internal workings of my brain.
Oh, you do. If that's what's going on in your head, you do. You're a pretty good actor.
Mate, no bluff too tough. Just keep going. So so you mentioned it's been well received by clients. So, potential return on investment of doing B Corp is more clients, better, employees reaching out. Has that been the case? Have people reached out to you because of B Corp?
Yeah, I think one company did out of Canada, and then it didn't eventuate into a project. I think, like I say, we got certified in March. It has been, full transparency, it's been a tougher year in the sort of advertising and branding sort of industry, anyways. But I think we had one prospective lead come through from Canada that's seen that we'd joined B Corp. And then, like I say, that unfortunately didn't sort of pan out. Apart from that, I don't think anyone has come to us specifically because we're B Corp. But I think it's just part of like a more compelling story that helps us get ahead of other agencies when we are sort of invited to pitch for work. A lot of pitches that we're doing these days, whether it's for government projects, so we do quite a few large government projects, and or not-for-profits. We're pitching for one at the moment. Can't sort of say who it is yet, but hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get it. And they talk about their values and how do your values align. Well, now it's like, we've actually got a tangible kind of measurement to say, well, these are our values, and it's actually, it's pretty clear, and we're actually legally obliged to, put people planet on equal footing as a profit and all that kind of stuff. It's in our company constitution. So it's like a stamp of immediate, recognizable, and I think everyone knows what B Corp is now these days and all that kind of stuff. So that's probably the biggest advantage, is whenever we're asked, what are your values as an agency, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of like, well, yeah, we've got the certification to kind of prove that we're not just all talk.
Yeah.
And that goes a long way. So I think it's really hard. It's really hard to put a figure on it, or really hard to put,
Sure.
how much have we converted thanks to B Corp? Or I'd say it's a big part in everything that we've converted this year, and we've definitely converted larger projects than we ever have. And I think that sort of being values aligned is really, really important, and showing that you're a good business that that treats staff and people well, especially with government work, because government doesn't want any scandals or any oh wow, we've just given this contract to this company that pays under minimum wage or whatever. So I think for them it's a real sign of reassurance as well. It's like cool.
Totally agree. So what does being a B Corp mean for you guys in the business?
Yeah, it means, I don't know, constantly, like I think we're sort of really realistic as well. Like when we did it, did the process with you last year, we said this has to be a not like a tick and then we're done. And cool, let's not worry about this until we're reassessed in 3 years or whatever it is. It's really setting up the foundation, the baseline year. So we really want to better our scores on every metric as we go. So I think it's been for us, what does it mean? It means being way more intentional about the kind of the values that we've had from the start and starting the business, ensuring that we do the right kind of work, and also actually something that I forgot to say before, being B Corp, actually, when we do turn down work, which, like I say, we've done quite a few times this year for fossil fuel companies or whatever, it's actually quite a good excuse to get you out of that shit work without making it too personal.
Nice.
Not telling, we don't want to work with you because you're doing bad stuff for the planet. It's like, sorry, we actually can't work with you because we're B Corp certified, and we take that really seriously. So that's been a massive advantage. So I think that's sort of what it means to us is living out these values that we've now committed to formally, and sort of having a benchmark and a tangible score, which is great about the B Corp system, to kind of measure things against and get better.
Perfect. No, I love it. And so thoughts on the future for B Corp. If you look sort of 10 years into the future, what does the world of B Corp look like for you? Yeah,
it's a tough one, because I love Seven, and I know Gideon from Seven, who you mentioned just before. You mentioned his partner. Sorry, what was Elena, who I don't think I've ever met, but know of her and all that. And it's honestly, it's awesome seeing, like, saw that they became B Corp and all that. And from a selfish business perspective, you're like, we don't want too many agencies to become B Corp because then it becomes meaningless again. So there's that funny tension. Where you're like, I don't selfishly, from a business perspective, I don't want too many agencies to be B Corp. But of course, in the spirit of greater good, I'm fully on board with it, and delighted that the movement is growing. Crystal ball gazing in 10 years, I don't know. I think it's going to become even more prolific and well known. I think it's probably going to become by the sounds of it, sort of even harder to get. And I think they'll I guess meet this kind of rise in demand for it, and sort of more knowledge about the B Corp system with a kind of rise in what's the word, like checks and balances to make sure that it is really, really stringent. Because I guess the more people that are on it, the more perceived kind of perception that it maybe is easier to get, and it maybe loses a bit of its mana, which I'm sure the B Corp movement doesn't want to do. So it must be a really tough tension for them as well, because obviously they want it to grow, they want more and more businesses to be B Corp certified. But I'm sure they're probably aware of that the more that have it, then the kind of perceived value of it maybe diminishes a wee bit. I sort of really don't know beyond that. I think it's just going to keep growing. I think now one thing that's remarkable is, I think when we first talked about B Corp maybe 4 years ago when we started the business, I'd say most people that we told didn't really know what it was, or there was a few people. I remember talking to, you mentioned Sam earlier from Little Yellow Bird. I remember talking to her about it years and years ago, and she was obviously fully onto it. But a lot of other Kiwis just didn't know about it. Now I think if we mention it to anyone, or when they see the book and they see B Corp on the back of the book, I think everyone knows what it is now, which is really, really cool. So I think it's just going to keep growing.
Yeah, we definitely when I'm giving any sort of keynotes or talks or workshops on B Corp, even 3 years ago, I'd say to the room, like, who's even heard of B Corp? And there'd maybe sometimes be no hands. Maybe like one or two hands, and maybe one of them had got the wrong thing and they were actually thinking of something else. Whereas now you go, who's heard of B Corp? And you might get 3/4 of the room putting their hands up.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
now I'm going, can you name a B Corp? And they can go, oh yeah, I fix and fog peanut butter, or Kiwi Bank or Kathmandu or whatever. Like, okay,
sure.
anecdotal evidence definitely cut through is getting there.
100%. Yeah,
So
and
cool.
that's so important. I think yeah, having those those brands that people know and like and use, and that know that B Corp is definitely going to help spread the movement even more. I think for me, it was actually, it was probably that as well. I'm trying to think now where I first ever heard of it. I've got a massive crush on Patagonia as a brand, and Allbirds as well, and was lucky enough to spend a day at Patagonia HQ in California a few years ago, and then spent a week at Allbirds. Had met Tim when I was a journalist, and Top Bloke had sort of told him about Offcut and all that, and he said, "Oh, why don't you come spend a week with us in at Allbirds?" And
As you
so,
do.
which is really really cool. So we went maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and and it was still like really in the early days of Allbirds, reasonably early days. And had a great time there. But anyways, like those experiences and sort of seeing those brands that are so cool and so admirable, and what they stand for and how they do business and all that, was definitely made me want to be part of that club. It's like that's definitely where I want to go as well. So nice. I think that's super important, having high profile brands that people love.
100%. And I remember how excited I was when I heard from the team at Kathmandu, like, we're doing this. I'm like, you don't understand how big this is going to be, because you're going to have the B Corp logo in all your stores, and like we've never had that before. And you're going to you've got retail staff that can explain this to a public. Whereas before that, I mean, there was Brienne with the teak and Little Yellow Bird, but Little Yellow Bird was, the fairly niche B2B. Brienne, I guess, really did blaze that trail in terms of that consumer facing product, but then she was mainly D2C, so it wasn't kind of like that in-store, hey, our whole store is a B Corp, like B Corp logo everywhere.
In high profile central city locations. I mean, Kathmandu is so high profile. It's wicked, and it's so it's so awesome that companies like them have done it. Kiwi Bank stuff. Yep. It's wicked. It's great to see, and it definitely kind of motivates smaller businesses like ours to go ahead and do it.
Nice. And so, final question then: what does the future hold for Not Another? You're clearly doing some great stuff. You and Mark are just having a great old time. You've expanded significantly since I last heard, because I think when we went through the assessment, you had like 3 part-time employees or contractors. So things are obviously doing okay. The world's your lobster. So what's up next?
Yeah, well, we are just growing, just trying to do not just more work, but more of the right type of work, So, like I said earlier, doing sort of work that gets us out of bed in the morning, sort of for-purpose work is really what excites us as a business, and it's what gets our staff excited as well. We've got hopefully we've got a few sort of good announcements coming up with some good clients that we've recently landed. We're doing bigger projects for government projects and that kind of stuff. We're doing more for-purpose work, which is really really cool. Gets us really excited. And I think that's kind of it for us, is just continue growing in the right kind of direction, not just growth for growth's sake, but sort of being quite intentional with it. And that's the advantage as well when you're a slightly more established business, is you can afford to say no to certain things. You can sort of attract the right type of clients as well through the work that you have done, and that's really cool, because it makes it a lot more enjoyable to do the mahi as well.
Nice.
That's kind of it for us.
Nice, man.
Growing our little empire from the bottom of the world,
mate. Well, and you're growing good. That's how we like it. That's what it's all about, man. Grow good, grow, but grow well. Do it good.
100%.
Make impact. So
100%. And that's that's definitely something that I think that perception's been getting lost now, which is good. Where if you back in the day, if you wanted to do something that's sort of for purpose, there was this sort of perception that you can't be financially successful. I think that's it's totally untrue. You can definitely do both. And we're very just Mark and I, financially and business wise, but we're also not compromising our ethics or doing anything that doesn't sit well with us, and to do that, and we want to make sure that we are growing in the right kind of way.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, mate, it's been really good to catch up. It's been a while. I think the last time I
Likewise.
saw you in person was at your Christmas do.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Last
Yeah.
year.
It's about time we organised that again, actually.
I reckon that was a belter of a little party. But hopefully it won't turn into like a Facebook party and all the listeners go, "Hey, Adrien, I heard you got like some cool party in Sumner." I mean, maybe we'll do a beach party this time. But no, love your vibe, man. I've always just seen you doing cool stuff. And I have no doubt that you will continue to do some cool stuff and make some waves from Sumner. So yeah, no, keep on keeping on, brother.
Cool. Thanks so much, Tim. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for all the mahi that you do, because it's impressive and it's awesome, and you are the sort of the glue that holds the B Corp community together in New Zealand. And I know you've worked really hard to grow it to where it is now and beyond, and it's really impressive, because you've been talking about B Corp for way longer than anyone else I know, and
way too long.
You're not just a sort of jump on the bandwagon when it starts going good. You've been there from the start and talking about how good it is. So it's awesome that see it sort of flourish so much.
Yeah, tell me about it. It feels like it's been in the trenches for sort of 8 years, and then suddenly, oh, hang on a minute, we can see some light here at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. So yeah, it feels good. Yeah.
Cool. No, really cool. Really cool.
Right,
thank you very much for having me.
You have a great weekend.
Sweet. You too. See ya.
Hey, it's Tim here, that B Corp bloke from Grow Good. If you want more content on purpose, B Corp, how to do more good in the world as an individual or a business, then you know the drill. Hit the like and subscribe. Check out some of our other videos. They're probably floating around here somewhere. You know how it works. Thank you so much. See you next time.